Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Pedophile Huntress. We are here tonight with a common goal that each one of you be encouraged and united in love. We welcome you all. Tonight's discussion is about the process of breaking family ties. I received an email from Emily a couple of weeks ago, and the email said, "Good morning, Jody. I thought of a topic for discussion, the process of deciding to break ties with family of origin. When I was in that process, I wish there were resources to help me, resources that weren't just full of anger and contempt. So I'd like to share my journey a bit to help others who might be considering staying or going in terms of connection to parents, siblings, etc." Welcome back with us tonight, Emily. I'm so happy you're here, and this is just such a great question. Also with us tonight is Carol Boyce. She's been with us before as well. She is the author of First, I Believe You. Carol, I have to tell you, I was on social media this week and another advocate, she posted this and I thought of you instantly. She said, "What if a friend came to you and they told you that they were suffering from cancer? And your very first response is, I believe you." Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't this be bizarre? And
Yeah.
yet, for an incest victim or a child that has suffered sexual abuse in their early years, people are like, I don't know if I believe you or not, but first I believe you is a really good response. But wasn't that good because it is so
Yes.
bizarre that really we have
Mhm.
to say first? I mean, I love that and it's true and it is what we want to hear. But I loved her equation to if a friend came to you suffering from cancer. Can you imagine saying,
Right.
I don't really know if you're telling me the
Yeah,
truth?
are you telling me the truth? Really?
I
And
mean,
it's with incest and people we know that
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh no, I don't believe that.
How
I
how
don't
could you
believe it."
recover those memories? How could your
Yes.
body still be hurting 30 years later from a crime that occurred 35 years ago?
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
right.
Right. So,
Mhm.
Emily, I love this topic tonight. It's so amazing. And I have a lot to say, but because you brought this topic up, you bring us in, and you know, Carol and I will have a lot to say about it. Just for the people listening and the viewer, each one of us lived through childhood incest. Each one of us are now not close to our families of origin. So, just for the record, we come through this conversation with experience, and experience is really what gives you wisdom in life. So, go ahead and start, Emily.
Yeah, so I have a journal I just pulled out because I prepared a few notes. So I'll give you a little timeline. Let's see, in 2020, when the pandemic was occurring, was when another set of kind of opening in my journey and process in my heart occurred because of a letter my mom sent to me. And it was basically saying, I want you to say we're all good so I can die in peace when I get COVID, which was really bizarre to me. It was really hard
Mhm.
because it came from a very seemingly vulnerable place, but at the same time, it was basically like, we're still all like good about everything that has happened in our lives, right? Because my family has been very much in denial, not willing to engage about anything. I was the one who brought all of it to them in, let's see, like 2010, maybe around that when I was about 30 years old.
Mhm.
And maybe 2012. It kind of all muddles together in that time, but it was a good 8 to 10 years after I had first
Mm.
confronted my mom and dad about
Right.
everything, and very little had changed. Um, and so I tried to respond to her honestly, and I gave it so much thought and prayer because I didn't want to just keep playing the game of saying, "Oh yes, this
Mhm.
Mhm.
everything is fine."
Mhm.
Especially given the gravity of what she was trying to like enter into. I was like, okay, this is my chance to really speak what's going on in my reality anyway. And so I tried to bring her into that. I spent a lot of work and time on writing back, and she didn't respond in a way I had hoped she would. I wrote to her that, I don't feel at peace. I don't feel like we have a shared
Mhm.
reality or understanding.
Mhm.
It's been a very hard thing for me to be in life with you. And she texted me back, very cryptic, kind of like trying to get more out of me, but it was not good communication. It was really tough. And so as this was kind of going on, I didn't want to just keep texting her back. Like that didn't feel right. I
Mhm.
knew that I wasn't ready to talk on the phone with her in real time because of what she tends to do in conversations, which is just break down and sob and sob and sob and sob, which doesn't really get anywhere.
Right,
Um,
which actually can be a form of manipulation, by the way.
yeah, it's
Right.
called, from
Mhm.
what I've learned in the process is like using vulnerability to become the
Mhm.
victim in the conversation.
Mhm.
It's a hard thing to,
It's a common tactic too, though.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So anyway, I entered into therapy. We did a lot of work. I basically took a break from contact with my family starting in May 2020. I went deep into therapy. My husband was so kind. If you have a supportive partner,
Mhm.
um, I just encourage you to take the time to enter into real conversation with them. And like, if they are trustworthy, like deepen that and enter into that because he was so supportive and helpful to me. But it was a long process of writing down everything, talking through with a therapist, writing to my
Can I
parents.
just pause for
Yeah,
1 minute? If you're
sure.
single, stay single. Don't go try to find a person to come
Right.
in
Oh,
and
I'm
help
so
Yeah.
you.
sorry. I'm just
And the
saying.
only reason I add that is because much of my healing, I was single for 13 years, and the
Okay.
worst thing I could have done was to try to
Sure.
bring somebody into that relationship. That's all I'm gonna say as just a side note. Keep going.
Well, I just know that sometimes people don't bring their spouse
Yes.
in
Right.
or
Both
they
ways
don't
are true.
trust enough. So
Yes.
for me, it was really good. I'm very thankful for
And
his
for Carol
involvement.
too. Carol's husband was there with her.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My husband, he didn't understand it at all. I mean, he had not been molested, but he was amazing, just supporting me, yeah,
That's
just
cool.
trying to learn how to support me. And yeah, because you're going through so much
Hmm.
change. And
Oh, that's
honestly,
so true.
during it all, I was sure I would lose him because I didn't know which way was up.
Oh, yeah. And I felt
And
so, I was in such a dark period of my life. I could mother, but that was about all. And thankfully, I still
Mhm.
could mother, right?
mhm,
So in any case, it was a prolonged time of processing, of writing. And what was really sad about it is we, I mean, I have mixed feelings about this now, but we asked my parents, like, if we're going to be in touch with you at all, we want you in therapy. Like, that's just our
Mhm.
condition. So nominally they went, but my dad was not engaged at all. He stopped after, I don't know, maybe one, two sessions.
mm,
And then my mom was, it was interesting because the therapist agreed to meet with me, which was very weird, but he did. And they wanted to have him meet with me every other week. And I was like, no, no, this is your work to do. I'm not going to do this work for you. It was again like this very manipulative, strange
So
request.
was it your parents that asked you to get into counseling?
No, I asked them.
Okay,
I went
right.
into counseling.
And you know what? You know, my initial take on that is because I've done the very thing, years and years ago. My father's now gone. I'm so thankful. But anyway, I you try this, but I really think that these narcissistic people who are predators, they think that they can actually manipulate anybody. So they're not scared of
Oh yeah.
counselors. They're
No,
not
and the
scared of
counselor
pastors.
even
They're not scared of
no.
anybody.
That's true. And my parents, the counselor told me my dad was just like having none of it. And my mom was trying to manipulate him, which I thought was a little unprofessional of the counselor to
mhm.
disclose how that was to me. And then I was like, I don't trust this counselor either. So it was a little bit messy. But the bottom line was by the end, after a lot of work, the counselor did say to me, because I agreed to meet with him 2 times in the midst of that. And the counselor said to me, your mom is not a safe person for you. And I was like,
Mhm.
yes, yes. And it was very
Right.
validating to me.
Right.
And it really helped me. I had already been doing a whole lot of other work, which I can explain more if you'd like. But it was interesting because I was on a walk and I was just kind of praying over all of it. And I felt God telling me, they're mine. You don't have to try to make this right anymore. You don't have to try to help them heal anymore. You be free. Like you go, you live your life. They're mine. And it was so freeing. I just was crying. Like I was out in the neighborhood walking and just crying and crying because I felt so relieved. And I think
Yeah.
what was
No,
going on was I was trying so hard to repair the
fix
relationship.
it.
Like I was
Yep,
trying to
fix it.
live out forgiveness and reconciliation,
Mhm.
but you can't do that one-sided.
No, no,
And you
no, no.
can't do it when the other party is not repentant or um ready to face it.
Right. So, and let's go back though. This is interesting. And
Yeah.
Carol, I don't know if you listened to this, but just starting with your mom's letter. Now, I've received letters like this from my mother and my father both, where I love you, baby girl. Go back to an old school kind of church. You're off in this new weird fangled thing. But when you listen to the intent of the intent of the letter is get back on this dysfunctional mobile and spin around
Yeah.
with us, because when you're off the mobile, it doesn't spin right. So we need to bring you back into denial. Can you promise me that before I die, that you'll go back into
Yeah,
denial?
that's really how it
Oh,
felt.
yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah.
exactly
And
what she
also,
was saying.
I hear a lot of, Emily, you're the only one that can make me feel all right. You're the only one
Yes.
that can, release
Fix
me
it.
to die. I mean, that's
Yeah.
extremely
Yeah.
manipulative.
I don't
It's
mean to
so
laugh, but it's true.
yeah, it's very telling of
Yeah.
what I grew up in, right?
And I was just going to actually
Mhm.
say, you guys, the theme of all good people who heard us say, you're responsible for what I feel. You're responsible for what I need. You're responsible for the love that I get in life, right? Because what bad people take from children is their unconditional love. That's the
Yeah.
truth of what they're
Yeah.
really hunting for, because I believe these crimes are evil. People don't like to say it's evil, but you know what evil doesn't have,
Total
you
evil.
guys? Is evil doesn't have love. And what do they want?
Mhm.
And what do children actually have the cleanest of and the purest form of? Love.
Of
So
love,
even if
yeah.
you just start in that letter, Emily, and I
Mhm.
know how it affects a daughter's heart, which is so good for us to talk to a son and a daughter to talk about this, because they've made us so responsible. So Carol, what were you going to talk about that? You went to your father as well. Now, was your mother still alive? They didn't
Um,
separate, did they?
no, they were still married. My mother died of breast cancer when I was
Okay.
29, and I had no memories at that point. So, in some ways, let me say this too. You're lucky to see what your mother actually does, because,
Mhm.
I'm kind of guessing what my mother would have done. But when I started getting memories of it, I gave it a good 6 months before I even said anything to my father. We had one, and my father had been molesting me, for those who don't know, since I was very young, probably, starting when I was about 3. Um, anyway, I did
But
have
all the
him
way
come.
into your teen years.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. I know.
Mhm.
And I get that, but for a long
Mhm.
time, it's like
A
having
long
Mhm.
time.
it's like having
Uh,
coffee in the morning. Right. I get it,
Yeah,
because that was
yeah,
the same
yeah,
for me.
right, right. But I did have him come to one therapy session um, with my therapist, and he denied the whole thing. And he had done that in letters too, like, how could you do this to me? How could you say I did this? I'm a good person. I spent my life healing people. He was a physician, right?
Mhm.
I would never hurt anyone. I would never hurt you. And he was
Mhm.
just livid,
Mhm.
But that was it. And Emily, I think I think the really, really difficult part of this is the family. I don't know. I mean, the heartache is
Mhm.
unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
The loss is unbelievable because these people also have a very good side.
Oh
And
yeah.
right,
It's
a
very
very
confusing. Just, I think that's the
yes,
best way to describe it. It's
yes,
extremely confusing.
extremely, and it's all about this deep love and
Well,
care you might have
yeah.
had at some point.
It
Right.
is. And so that's the thing that's so, so, so hard to unravel. And I
Yeah.
do want us to talk about that tonight because while my father gave me my nightmares, and I know people have heard me
Yes.
say this before, he also comforted my nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As a
Mhm.
child, that's incredibly complicated that you bring pain to me, but then you're also the source of comfort for that pain.
Yeah.
And so, in the mind of a child, as we grow, guess what all human beings tend to do? We're going to put away the bad and we're going to bring forward the good. People think kind of, you actually, to me, healing brings forward the bad and lessens the good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
my therapist said to me, well, you're saying that to make them less dangerous to you.
yes.
When I'm,
That's a
when I
great way to
presented,
put
they're
it.
really good people. They're involved in their
Yeah.
church. I said all these things, and
Right.
she just said, well, you're saying that to make them less dangerous to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember that was the first session with that therapist. And I was like, what are you saying? I was offended because I was
Exactly.
still in the village, right?
100%. In
I
that
was still in the
mindset.
house of cards. I was in the
Yes.
house of cards.
That's a
Mhm.
great way to put
And
it.
I think it's really important to understand too, this takes years and years and years.
Yes.
This dealing with your family.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I tried so hard. I have 3 siblings, aunts, all kinds of people
Mhm.
that, were just telling me they didn't believe me. This never happened. How could you
Mhm.
do this to the family,
How
and
could you do this to the
yes,
family?
how
Yeah,
could
that,
I
yep.
do this when my life is completely in shambles over this? And it took me a long time. It
Mhm.
honestly is still very painful. And it's just recently I stopped seeing my siblings.
Mhm.
I just don't need people
Mhm.
treating me terribly and
Right.
still telling me after 30 years that this didn't happen.
So,
My
Yeah.
God,
I
yeah.
no, I'm sorry, Carol, finish.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Well, what you say makes me think of stopping right here and talking about the expectation of what that's about. So it's not like we walk away from our family and then boof, all of a
Yeah,
sudden I
Mm-mm.
feel wonderful and I feel no loss.
No.
Every
right.
Christmas comes, I have siblings that I miss. When my birthday comes,
Yep.
Mhm.
it tears me up. I think about my siblings and how
Mhm.
far apart, and yet I haven't talked to them for some of them 20 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, I think the expectation is that healing incorporates pain, doesn't it? Like we go on
Mhm.
with it. And so you learn how to I don't live every day. I didn't expect actually to cry, but I guess what I'm really trying to say is we don't stop our love for them. We
No.
leave not
No,
because we don't love them. We
no.
leave
Mhm.
because we've learned to love ourselves too,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So
And that
talk right
we deserve a lot better. And I
exactly.
think, part
Exactly.
of the denial or whatever you might call it is that we can change our family, that we
Yeah.
Right.
can make them see the light, that we can convince them
Mhm.
uh that we're right and they're not right, and or they're not right. And
No,
I've
my
never seen them change.
No,
I
and
haven't
I
seen.
think that's one of the biggest griefs for me
yes.
because,
Yes.
in like
Yep.
everything I've read, they call it a healing fantasy or a false hope.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and yet I'm like, well, there's supposed to be that hope. Like there's supposed to be change. And I
Mhm.
I just remember feeling so discouraged, and there is so much grief. And yet, without stepping into reality, somehow I'm complicit in it. Like I'm maintaining
Yeah,
That's
a
incredibly
false
true.
peace.
you are.
And a
Exactly.
false peace is
Mhm.
evil.
Yeah.
And
It's true.
but it's so much grief because it is such a loss, and
Yes.
sometimes so hard for myself because I've chosen it, right? And
Yes. So
and
you're
that
choosing,
gets
you're
hard.
choosing, right? You're choosing to take care of you, but it feels like you're cutting
Mhm.
yourself in half because all of
Mhm.
those years, my brother and I played, my sisters were in the house, we made popcorn together, we
Yeah.
we baked cookies all the time. We had 4 kids, you know what I mean? We're always in the kitchen or outside playing, or so it's really sad. And
Mhm.
I loved, my counselor said to me one time, Jody, your siblings don't hate you, they just want you to be quiet. And
Yeah.
so I've come to peace with, but you know what, you guys? I've watched them suffer for their choices. My brother
Mhm.
drank so bad that actually he created damage now because he had his fifth heart attack. And then
Oh.
he
Oh,
laid on the ground for 2 minutes dead. And now he's not the same. And do you know why? He knew
Mm.
what he needed to do to be different. But
yeah.
people, and if you're listening to me, if you don't choose to do the work that we are talking about here, it will cost you in other ways. So you bet
Mhm.
I love my siblings and I miss them, but I refuse to have my life intermixed with shit
Yeah.
anymore. I don't know
Yeah.
another word to
And
say.
and to acknowledge that each one of us is saying for generations, we're saying
Yes,
no more. This
Right.
generations.
family will no longer be
Mhm.
totally dysfunctional and not
Yes,
talking about anything and having these horrible, horrible things happen.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's really the expectation on us is that we will keep it.
yep.
yes,
I had my aunt say that. Basically, this happened to me, but I don't talk about it.
Yeah.
This I know
Mhm.
this happened to so and such, but we don't talk about it. We're just
No.
yep,
gonna, and basically
yep,
pressuring me when I
yep,
disclosed to her what had occurred. So it is the norm, and we are
Yeah.
stepping in and saying,
No more.
no,
no
it's
more.
Yeah.
stopping
N-
here.
No
Yeah,
more bullshit.
that's exactly right.
No more of these narratives that it was okay or that it was just not that bad. And well, yeah, I was molested, but I'm not gonna speak up about it. Why can't you just forget it? Why can't you just move
Yes,
on?
because it
You
doesn't
know,
work that way.
it
It
does
does
not work
no.
that
I
way.
had a lady tell me, I went out and it was a friend, and she said that something like this happened in my past too. And guess what? I'm not going to talk about it because it does no good. And I thought, you have
Uh-huh.
no idea how wrong you are. Every day of your life,
Mm,
Yes.
you're going to pay for that decision. And I know that it's true. I had another girlfriend. We went to high school together, and she said, my mom came to me, my sister came to me and said that your dad, raped you. And she said, I'm not going there. I'm just not going there.
Mm.
I'm not going to share her story other than that. But you know what? If we don't go there, she actually has since got my book and we've talked about things, but you have to open this door because the older you get, the harder it is to hide these things. It's true.
Yes.
mhm,
And,
Yep.
it's kind of this concept that you're right, healing is hard. You're right. We're
It's
not
really
actually
hard.
here to tell you it's easy. It's not easy. But you know what's worse is drinking 2 bottles a night just to go to sleep
Yeah.
because I
mhm,
was terrified. I had so much fear in my life. I couldn't get through a night without it. So
Yeah.
today I live such a freer, cleaner life than I ever have. But it's, my counselor used to always say, Jody, you've done the work. That's why you are who you are. But ladies, talk about that. One of the things you said, Emily, is I could talk about some of the tools I use. So I think everybody listening knows, we intuitively know these people are not good. Like, you
Yep.
just
mhm,
know, like if I'm going to sit at your table and we're all going to bullshit and everybody, the first person out's going to be talked about, and nobody's really loving each other, because what does real love do? You guys, love pushes you on to be better. So
Hmm.
if
mhm.
the love at that table is putting you back into denial and keeping you in prison, clearly this
And
isn't.
putting you in a role and keeping you
Yes.
playing and smiling when you're suffering.
Hmm.
Yes.
So, I'll show you a few. One of them, okay, I'm just gonna put it up here. I don't know if they can read it because it's gonna be backwards,
Oh
but
yeah,
this
no,
is an
just we'll read it.
It's not
excellent book.
backwards.
Oh, okay. If you want to take a screenshot or something for all the YouTubers.
Hmm.
Okay,
Emotionally
this
immature parents.
I'll tell you. This is
Okay.
an excellent book. I listened to it on audio first and then I bought a copy. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Wow.
It's a big book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a big
It's by
bestseller.
Lindsay C. Gibson, and she's a therapist. And when I was reading it, she is trying to guide people through how to stay in relationship with their parents. And I remember I was even telling my husband this week when I was preparing, I was reading and it was talking about how to manage the relationship. So basically saying you have to get to the place emotionally and psychologically in your own maturity and center that you can move into a place of management with your parent or parents.
Hmm.
And where you're like basically objective and outside of the conversation at all times. And I just was like, I can't do that. I can't do that and parent. Maybe I could do that when I'm not trying to parent, but when I'm trying to simultaneously protect and guide my daughter from these dangerous people and try to manage the
Yeah, that just
conversation.
sounds
Yeah, I was
that
like,
doesn't sound
I
now
do
this
not,
might be good if you really have immature parents that act like they're
right,
11, but they're not
not when you
hurting
have
you.
the degree of what I was
Right.
Yeah, I think
encountering.
it's a matter of degrees. Yeah.
Right. And so I was
Mhm.
reading that. This was a very helpful book. But when I got to that section towards the end of the book, I just remember turning to my husband and I was like, I can't. I don't
Yeah.
have the capacity to do it. I barely could spend a few hours with them without getting a whole nother set of things I need to process. So that was
See, and
very
that's a good point.
illuminating to me.
Right.
And this
Yeah.
book was really helpful. And then I also recently have listened to this book. It's by Desmond and Mfututu. It's called The Book of Forgiving. And they are from South Africa and they worked with post-apartheid people
Mm.
who'd gone through crimes
Yeah, and
and
that
the
was an
criminals
ugly
as
time. I
well.
knew somebody that
And
came
so
through
these
that.
people have actually gone through horror and
Mhm.
they give examples of people who have gone through horror of
Mhm.
similar degrees, although I do not believe incest was ever an example, but it was, similar tragedy. And they talk a lot about the process of moving through facing the trauma, and then making choices of, in the course of forgiving, either restoring or releasing the relationship. And they give language to all of it. And they give guided meditation and prayers, which are
That's
very
cool.
powerful.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
I really resonated with that idea of releasing the relationship. And I felt that moment I had experienced in, I think, 2021 when I was out walking and God was just saying, they're mine. You go live you. You don't need to stay connected to these people. You've done your work, basically, in this
Well,
connection.
right.
That
And
it was that process of releasing.
it is. And it's interesting. Similarly, now, not with my father, because we also had murder between us. And that was as an adult, I had a strong sense of wanting justice for that murdered woman. And so it
Mm-hmm.
was a little bit different to let go of. However, with my mom, I really felt God say the same thing. It was a different saying, but basically, leave her with me. You need to get on with
Mm-hmm.
life. And there is a really beautiful part of releasing. But I want to go back to something you said about managing your parents, because
Yeah.
I have to just say, now I'm going to use this as an example because it's actually a good example. If you had a rapist that came into your house and raped you in the middle of the night, you never knew who he was, and then he left. But then later he went to your church, and then someone's like, you need to manage a relationship with him. What would you
Yeah.
what would you tell that person?
That
I
was
would tell them that
ridiculous.
we
Yeah.
need to call the police.
Yeah. Let's
So
get some handcuffs out. Yeah.
So now the
Yeah. It's
reason I bring
crazy.
that up is these people raped us
Yeah.
over and over and over and over, and the most cruel kind of rape when you're small, over and over again. And yet we're going to manage relationships. So this, I don't think any good counselor that's trained in
No.
this for this
No.
particular course would
Yeah.
ever say
And
that's a good idea.
I disagreed with that. I wasn't going to do it. And, in
Right.
my case, it was not my father that molested me over and over. He assaulted me one time, but it was a young man that my parents brought into our home and kept in our home that raped me over and over and over. So, but my parents hid it and continue to hide it. They're continuing to live as if it never occurred.
So that's still,
which is
it's not safe.
equally as
Exactly.
it's
It's not
equally
safe.
criminal.
It
Mhm.
is.
It's absolutely cruel to you, Emily, when you're trying to heal and they're doing this denial stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
it's really incredibly cruel. And I think so much of, this relationship stuff is that we can't really believe our parents are who they are.
Mhm.
I think,
Mhm.
particularly with me, it took me a long time to
Yes.
really realize, yes, this is your father.
Because we've been groomed,
Yeah,
Yep.
we've been groomed,
and
and you have this false
in
narrative you
some
always lived with.
in my case, some very strong physical discipline if I said
Mine too.
otherwise or
Yeah.
suggested otherwise.
Mhm.
So that sticks with you, and it
Oh,
takes
yeah.
so much strength and courage to stand up and say otherwise.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So
mhm.
good for you, Emily. And really, you're changing generations
It is.
of your family, drama and dysfunction,
I
and
hope
good
so,
for
but
you. Good
it's
for you.
lonely. It's
I
lonely
know
It
it is.
is.
because,
It
you
it's
know,
so painful. It's
there are
so
family
painful.
deaths that have occurred, and I've chosen to not go
Yeah,
back.
Right.
Like,
Me
it's
I
just
have
too.
not
too.
worth it.
Me too.
But it's really, there's a big cost, a big sadness and grief to all of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know that I had no further capacity for any more injury. I had
Yep.
too much to heal already, and I
Yep.
couldn't. I
Right.
knew that I would end up having to check into a facility like for mental health care. I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
not be okay at all.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
you
And
and your daughter are the
Yeah.
primary focus, your husband. But
yes.
I also want to make sure that what's clear also is that this idea of being around your family changes whether you have children in your home. I mean,
Mhm.
the minute
Hugely.
I realized what had happened, I had my father around my
Mhm.
young children. I think they
Yes.
were 4 and 6.
Mhm.
And I mean, that was it. I never went near him after that. And
Mhm.
I mean, I had a couple interactions, but so anybody with young children and a family in denial, it is really dangerous. You
It
have to,
is.
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? So it's another
Good
thing with
point.
it, just
Well,
adults,
yes.
there's a little more choice there, but
Carol, I was thinking exactly the same thing
yeah,
because what we have when we talk about generational, this is much bigger than we are. And I have to say,
Mhm.
the person I am today is much because of my love for my children. And I
yep,
had to become a better mom. But,
Mhm.
I say often that time is of the essence when it comes to healing because it truly is. When
Mhm.
I was in my early 20s, I had my first daughter, and guess who asked to watch her? At my father. Well, as
Mhm.
she's grown, she's told me about, we found all these photos where she was naked and on his bed, and he
oh,
took all
is
these
that
photos.
right?
Yeah, it really is.
Oh,
It's true because he was a pedophile, a full-blown
Yeah,
pedophile.
he
But
couldn't.
unfortunately, you guys, I wasn't in my story. I was in
mhm.
Mhm.
that la fake land where
You were very young.
yeah, I was very
Yeah,
young. And you know what? I mean, he only hadn't probably raped me 4 or 5 years. You don't live in your story yet.
no.
But,
Mhm.
and then it's so tragic. I had a man in my community stop me and actually say, my father was a predator in our home.
Wow.
And then we never talked about it. We hid him. Then he did it to
Mhm.
all my children. And guess what we did? We hid him. And my kids are mad. You know
Mhm.
what I said? They should be mad at you. And you
Yeah.
guys should stand up and do something. So the point is that it's huge, you guys. It's huge that
Mhm.
we have got to
Mhm.
stop these
Yeah,
predators. And do you know
yeah.
how you stop a predator? You tell their secrets. Every predator I have seen, when you stand up to them and start telling the secrets, they dissolve. They might be strong for maybe a year or two, maybe. And they might fight you, maybe even 5. But I'll tell you what, their life starts changing because it's like you've all of a sudden taken that mold out of the darkness. And what happens when light hits it? It starts evaporating. And
Yeah.
it really is the way. But more importantly, whatever pain that it cost me is not as much as the freedom I
Mhm.
get knowing. I was just
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
my kitchen making tea on my way up here, and I have this adorable picture of my granddaughter who's now 13, but she was about 3, and she was in my
Oh,
kitchen with this apron on. And so I cook with her all the time. I keep it in there. And right before I came up, you guys, you know what I said? Father God, thank you that that little girl hasn't
Mhm.
been touched. And
Yep.
all
Mhm.
of my effort and all of her parents'
Totally.
effort. And
Yep.
that's why we do it. So you know
Mhm.
what? You bet I miss my siblings, but not enough. Because if you've been
Mhm.
abused and you don't get help, you might be an abuser. I don't know. But if you're not
Right.
safe, you're not coming around my kids.
Yeah,
Right?
you are not coming around my kids.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The family can have all the denial in the world, you know.
Yep.
And
Knock yourself out.
I worked so hard. They had children, and you know, it was like, do not ever let these kids around there.
Mhm.
And of course they did.
Yeah.
It was also down in LA, and I'm in Northern California. And I told him, if I ever hear it, I will call the police immediately,
Mhm.
Yeah. I
because they
did the
would not
same
arrest my
thing.
father. You know, that's a whole
Mhm.
nother story.
Mhm.
And they didn't believe me, and they did, you know.
Mhm.
When you went to
So
the police.
yep, went to the police. They wouldn't
Yeah.
do anything
No,
because it was so
Mhm.
long ago.
right, but let's
Yeah.
talk about this for a minute. So,
Yeah.
a lot of these people that I see that are on social media, guess what? They were hurt by somebody outside of their family. When
Mhm.
that happens, guess what? The cops do help you more. When it's your family, guess what the cops do?
Yes.
They shut the
Yes.
door. They're like, that is
Yeah.
a matter of the family. It's a crime. Incest is a crime. This is not a
Yes.
matter of the family. They don't help you. And even my own children, when her dad knocked her in the face, left a bruise on her face, the cops came, arrested him. She told them that her father sexually abused him, and they called me later. She was 15, you guys. And you know
Mhm.
what they told me? They said, it's just touching, and it was a long time ago, and
Yeah.
dismissed it. And you know what I said to that officer? Would you like to call my
Unbelievable.
15-year-old daughter and tell her, you know what, you guys, she was a heroin addict for the next 10 years. And fuck
Mhm.
that cop for doing that. And I'm sorry for saying that. But when
Yeah.
it's incest, they
No.
don't help us. And I'm
No,
sorry.
they don't.
It's hard. And
Yeah,
so the reason
it's
we start doing
ridiculous.
these kinds of things is to help people, right, Emily?
Right.
Like you were saying,
Absolutely.
how do we help you guys? Use your voice. And if the cops
Yes.
don't help you, don't believe yourself anyway. You're telling the truth, right? Carol
Yep.
First, I believe you. I love that. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
sorry that we even
Well,
have to say that.
and I think that the idea of not letting yourself be part, I mean, for me, my process was I needed to remove myself from just the charade of it all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that
And
helps
I
tremendously, doesn't it?
and and I think then I was able to see more clearly, and now I'm gaining a voice. And in terms of people who are trying to figure all of this out,
Mhm.
I have moved into a place, I mean, it's gone back and forth, all different emotions. I mean, anger and just disgust of all of it, and
And grieving.
confusion and
And
grief.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Yes.
in the end, I just see that they are so ill, so,
Yeah.
so ill, and so desperate,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so lost. And I feel so sad for them that they've had to build this facade
Mhm.
and feel so much pressure to maintain it and to not be able to be authentic ever.
Yeah.
Like maybe with
Mhm.
themselves or each other or their communities, like they will never be able
Right.
to actually be authentic. And
And I
to
think,
me,
Emily,
that
right?
is such a tragedy. And I don't know, I've moved into a place of just like wishing them to grow. I have
Mhm.
no idea what will happen, but I know I can't be with
But
them
it's not our
anymore.
job. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's
Right.
God's work and their choice.
Mhm.
And you know, they're basically too afraid to look at themselves. They're,
Yes.
you
Mhm.
know, most people do not want to open up their soul and really look at
Live
what's inside.
authentically.
Yeah, and be authentic. But
Yes.
I mean, the thing is, every step you take makes you authentic with your daughter and in
Mhm.
your family.
Yes. With your
And
husband,
yeah.
everybody.
Mhm.
And for
Mhm.
me, you know, I had kids later. I was like I was 30. And so I had a little more space with this whole thing. But I will say my family is 100% different than
Mhm.
mine of origin. And
Mhm.
I'm so glad.
Mhm.
And the kids have done so well.
Mhm.
I mean, it's certainly not perfect, but it's amazing when you raise kids, you
How
know, where they can
differently.
authentically be themselves. They're not terrified. They're not,
Mhm.
you know, living under these strange
Right.
rules. It's amazing how well they can come out.
Right.
So
And
no, it's
I
all worth it,
it
Emily.
is, and I
Thank
think that
you.
I think
Mhm.
it's fair, Emily, to say that there's an expectation that we can still have a hope for our family. I always say, get
Mhm.
to safety and love them from afar if you need to.
Yeah.
Which
Yes.
which brings me to this one place. I wrote a whole chapter, you guys, called Playing the Love Card. My kids also came through incest, unfortunately, very unfortunate. And I always told them the hardest card you're going to have to play to keep yourself free is the love card. So I wanted to just read a very short thing. So chapter 18 starts with the truth will set you free, but not until it's finished with you. And that's
Mhm.
David Foster Wallace from Infinite Jest. But I went to see my father. He was dying. And I walked into his house and we had this conversation. And in this chapter, we say a lot, but I'm only going to read just a brief part. And it said, his tone changed. And he said to me, frankly, what do you want from me? He died the next morning. Dad, you've taken everything that you could from me. I want nothing from
Mm.
you now. Your love is worthless. I'm here because I'm worried about your soul. I witnessed what you did. He leaned back into the couch, rested his hands on his knees, and said, you wait a lifetime for a love like that. Now, one of the things, you guys, that I wanted to
Mhm.
say about that is in 6 hours that I was with him, he never one time said, I love you, Jody. Do you know
Mhm.
Mhm.
why? Do you know why? Because he didn't love me.
Yeah.
And what he just said was he was still waiting for more love after
Mhm.
everything he'd taken from me. He said, you wait a lifetime for a love like that. He was basically telling me, you gave me unconditional love again. Well, now I'm not saddened by that because I'm thankful that I could grow into that human being that God has formed to do that.
Mhm.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that love card, we've kind of made a notion to it, but that love card is very strong. And it's almost what they call today a trauma bond. It's actually not
Mhm.
real
Yes.
love because the
Mhm.
Mhm.
love that I know today is not this love. I had a dead woman's body in his field that I needed to give up. So I needed to go see him. Will I go see my mom and have that conversation? No. I actually, before I left the state I lived in, went to see her and left with her my full forgiveness before I left.
Mhm.
But you guys, isn't it that love card that as a child, what we I want to articulate is we were groomed, yes, but the other part is it was our birthright to love and be
Mhm.
loved. And so
Mhm.
when
Mhm.
that's stolen from you, you're still seeking back what God created in us to love and be loved. And so even taking the grooming out of it, doggone it, I just wanted to say I love you and he never did. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
but oh, he did in his letters and his emails come back to me and
Right.
change and I'm going to say I love you, but you know what I mean? That
Right.
authentic love. Talk about that a little bit for a minute. The love
Well,
that you deserved as a child.
Mhm.
yeah, and you know, sociopaths don't love. They
That's
Mm.
don't,
right.
you know, they think they're loving, they may say it, they may not, but they can't love. I mean, I think the definition of somebody who
Mhm.
can hurt, you know, this helpless
Right.
child is they're a sociopath and they can get up and go to work the next day
Yeah.
and have no guilt. I mean, that's what sociopaths do. And so, yeah, they have no idea what real love is.
I
And
think
then
it's true.
we're raised thinking that is love.
Right.
Mhm.
And you
A
know, it's
sociopathic love, but it's
yeah,
all we got. So what are
it's
we going to
all we
compare it
got.
to?
You know, and
But
of
in
course you have no idea that you're living with a sociopath or what, you
Right.
know.
And in Emily, in your case, again, there's always degrees. Nothing is ever the same for everybody, right? And so
Yeah.
Mhm.
your father was not a rapist, although you did say that he did do inappropriate behavior. So, I
Mhm.
don't want to throw out labels to people, but a lot of people, I agree, if you can rape a child, you're probably a sociopath. Like,
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
that you know
And
what I
Yeah.
your own
own
I
child at
I
child
that.
that
th-
you're supposed to protect. And yeah, I
I
mean,
Exactly.
this
think
is a
Jody,
real, somebody's really off when they can do
yeah. Well, I think that not being willing to risk your reputation to protect your
Right.
child, which is what I experienced,
Yes.
Yes, it's
is
unbelievable.
it is extremely wrong, and
Well, I can't, and
it's criminal.
it is
So,
criminal.
but what you were saying, Jody, about love, you know, I think in my case, I never felt love from my parents. I didn't love them.
Mhm.
They didn't love me. I think what's
Mhm.
such a blessing is I had grandparents who loved me.
Yeah, I had a
Oh.
grandma.
And my parents, it's almost like my mother knew that that was going on because she was not able to bond with me as a infant. She was very, we did not, it did not go well for us.
Mhm.
So thankfully,
With
my
my
grandparents
yeah.
loved me. And
Oh,
my mom,
yeah.
even my parents left me with my grandparents a lot. I spent so much time with them. It was almost like my mom was like, here, this is your best chance
Oh,
at being healthy.
interesting.
That's how it felt to me.
Right.
You know, I would spend weeks at a time with them and go on summer vacations with them. And my grandmother and I were just best buddies, and she took me on all these trips and all
Wow.
of these adventures, and
Praise God for her. You know that.
Yeah,
yeah,
isn't that
really.
Yeah.
And I
wonderful?
All
feel like
right.
it was like a desperate act
Yes.
on my mom's part because I think she was sensing this isn't going well.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful
Well,
that
she
she did
sounds quite
that.
selfish. I'm just saying, just from
Yes.
Yeah, no,
observation,
you're right.
she sounds
It's
Like,
quite
mixed,
selfish, and she
right?
kind of
probably just wanted some
narcissistic.
free
Oh,
time. Yeah.
completely. Well,
Right.
completely. She had to work out her relationship with me. She needed a break, all that. But
Wow.
I'm grateful because my grandparents were beautiful people full of love.
That's
And
cool.
I was blessed to have that. So
Yeah.
I did experience love, which I think has given me so much richness in my life.
That's
Mhm.
beautiful.
But I never felt safe with my parents. I never felt like it was a home. I never wanted to be with them,
Yeah, I
you
never
know.
felt love
So
from my mother either, but I do think that we have a desire to be loved by them. You know, that's my point.
yes.
But me and my mom were very, she just didn't like me, and I didn't like her much either. And that's just the truth of things. But then when you
Hmm.
grow, you kind of want to change it, right? You guys, like, we're the
Yeah.
one that changes the story because
Yeah.
we want a kinder, softer story to tell, don't we? That's what people don't
Yeah.
understand is if you're telling your story, don't ever say I believe you, because the truth is, if they're talking about it, they've been thinking it long before it ever came out of their mouth. Just
Hmm.
say what a courageous call you have to actually share that. That's so cool. That's what
Yeah.
I'd say, right?
Yeah,
But
and I think, you come out of your childhood with a real hole where you were
Hmm.
supposed to be loved. And I think, and that's where we're
so
always
true.
kind of looking for, alcohol, drugs,
Yep.
food, whatever. You're dying, or
Yes.
to fill up this hole. And of course we still look at the parents like, please,
Hmm.
please, make me feel better, make me feel like I'm actually a whole person. And that's one of the biggest jobs, is learning. You have to
Validation.
fill that,
Hmm.
you've got to fill that on your own. And
Yeah.
yeah,
What
I
if
used to be
Hmm.
so mad at my husband that he couldn't fill that up. And then
Mm-hmm.
I finally let go. A therapist finally convinced me,
Right.
he can't possibly fill this hole in
You
you.
guys, it's that you see you that
You.
God always says to
Uh-huh.
me, right? You see yourself. But this actually brings us all the way back to the very start of this conversation, in that whole starting about, if you stay with your family, getting right back to where we started, you know what happens is all of these wounds stay open and fester.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
when you
Hmm.
move down the road, you actually begin to
Mhm.
heal, and you will not heal when you stay with them. And
Hmm.
that's just sadly the truth. So you can choose to stay, and we get the hard part of it. Your life will be filled with other people when you leave, but the truth is, those wounds, they keep, like you just said, Emily, when you were explaining it, you said they open these wounds. They give us a label that's never good. They open the wounds and then say we're back in the family, and it feels terrible to be there, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
we know it's not right. And we
Yeah.
Exactly.
also cannot go backwards. once you
Mm-mm.
realize
That's the
all
truth.
this and what was going on, you can't go backwards. You can't
But you want
think
to
that,
sometimes, you know.
yeah, oh,
I
sure.
I remember
Well,
saying to
you want to
Redmond,
belong.
you
Yeah.
do. You
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
do.
And like Emily said, you start missing, I missed weddings, I missed
Me
Mm-hmm.
too.
funerals, I missed, lots of really important times with the family. It's
Yep.
heartbreaking. I'd
Yeah.
sit home and cry,
But
but I had to do it.
I've been there
Had
too.
to do it.
Go
Yeah.
ahead,
well,
Emily.
one of the things that I had an image of come to me as I was trying to sift through all the relationships of different family members, which is quite a
Mm-hmm.
process, was okay, I am at habitat restoration zone right now. Like I need to treat myself that way.
Yeah.
Like if you ever been out on a hike and it's like
Yeah.
I
roped
love it.
off.
It's a
I
great
love
way to
that
say
too.
it.
Yeah, so there it's roped off. There's a sign there like
Right.
don't tread on me, like well, that was political. I don't mean it that way.
No, no,
But
no. We didn't
no, but
take it
like
that way.
basically like this is no, no one can come here because we're trying to regrow the
Yeah.
grasses here, the native plants. We're trying to get
Yes.
everything back in balance and healed.
Yeah.
And when I saw myself that way, and I was like, okay, I am the park ranger that has to make sure that
Yes.
this stays protected.
That's
That
right.
really
I love
helped
that.
me because it gave me an image and like helped me own what my needs were. And
Mhm.
it's helped me a lot, and I am thriving. I'm able to go back to work. I started a full-time job.
Isn't that amazing?
Things that I at the start of it in 2020 I thought I would never
Yeah.
get to.
Yeah.
And so you're right, Jody, that once we break free, then the wounds can really start to heal
Mhm.
and we can take the time to really process, and that takes so
Yeah.
much work. And when it's in real time,
Mhm.
you're adding to what you need to process, you will never catch up. That's how
Right.
I felt.
Right.
Well,
And
and
you keep,
yeah, go
yeah.
ahead, Carol. No, you go ahead,
I was
Carol.
going to say, yeah, and your family keeps trying to put you in that position again.
Mhm.
You can't do it. You're going through a fire, you're going through horrible stuff to get to the other side.
Mhm.
And there is a very good other side to it. But
There is.
yeah.
I love though, kind of this is what you just said. In my heart, I can remember going through the murder, you guys. I really thought I was going to lose my mind. When you said that, Emily, there is sometimes when your soul is so burdened by pain, it just feels like it's rupturing or just
Mhm.
splitting.
Yeah.
And I remember going to bed thinking, God, I can't walk through this memory. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And you know what song I heard? Was that song from the Abominable Snowman when it's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and he says, just put one foot in front of the other and soon you'll be walking out the door. And do you know,
Uh,
it made me smile. And I remember being really drunk that night because I was just terrified to go to bed. I was having really bad dreams that dead lady
Yeah.
was under my legs. And I smiled and I thought, God, you would give me a humorous song. And
Yeah.
what got me through was just putting one step foot in front
Yeah.
of the
mhm.
other. And it's like what you said, though, what a beautiful example is you don't have to leave them forever. Just leave them for today. And then tomorrow, when you get up, just leave them for tomorrow if you need to, too. And then pretty
Right.
soon you'll be putting one foot down the road. It'll be 20 years later. But that's a beautiful way that you just said to start it, actually. It is the perfect example of living in today because tomorrow has enough troubles, right?
Right.
Just stay in today. And if you do it that way, just stay in today, then all of a sudden you turn around. Sometimes I can't believe the strides I've made. Like I don't dream about the dead lady anymore. And,
Right.
all of these things, like you say, there is a good side to it all, but we just want to be authentic and real and tell the listener that what it really feels like. Because you can read a book from a third party that's talked to us all
Mhm.
and compiled it together. And it's not quite the same as listening to us
It's going
about the
through it.
scrappage and all the shrapnel we have in our back from going to
Well,
Yeah.
and what
family.
I mean, there's probably, I know we're almost to time, but there's a lot of backlash that I've had to deal with, a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah, that's the
urging me,
shrapnel I was talking about.
yeah, a lot of, accusations
Yes.
and
Yes.
ugly, ugly things. But
Yes.
once you know the truth to your core,
Yeah.
in some ways, those things just kind of glance off. Like they
Yeah.
might hurt, but it's like, well, you're mistaken. I'm sorry, you're mistaken. Mhm.
Yeah,
you know
and
what?
it was with my family to this day, it's very much the closer the people are, the worse it is. The more they fight you,
Yes,
tell you it
yes.
never happened.
Because you're
Um,
probably triggering them. That's what's
yeah,
happening
and
is it's triggering to them.
it's triggering as their
Mhm.
family, and
Right?
they don't want to hear about it.
No,
And
they
it's
don't.
like, there's also the
Don't make me
important.
go there.
Yeah. And it's also very important to treat each person individually, because
Yes.
Mhm.
there were a
Yes.
few like second cousins. Now they could handle the truth.
Yeah, mine
And
too.
you know what I mean? But boy, you get in
Right.
those
Right.
Mhm.
primary relationships,
There's no way.
there's
Yeah.
no way. And it's so heartbreaking. It's just so
It
heartbreaking.
is. And you know what? This is why we've brought this community together of like-minded
Mhm.
people because it
Yeah.
really helps. I mean, I just really genuinely love our work. Someone asked me last night, I went to a really beautiful dinner with a couple friends, and they said, Jody, how do you find the time to do this? And then she looked at me and she said, you love this. And and
Hmm.
she said, my heart's this big, your heart's this big. But you know what, Emily, it was like what you said to me. I wish somebody was there because I could listen to Joyce Myers. I like Joyce Myers, but the problem is I don't need to hear, I need to be better. And she does say some good things, but I needed someone to tell me what it felt like when your heart was breaking. I
Yeah.
needed
Mhm.
somebody to feel like when I couldn't get out of bed and I was drunk, when God came in and said, Jody, just put one foot in front of the other. I need reality about that. I don't need to
Mhm.
hear, I didn't need to drink 2 bottles of wine. I already know that. I didn't know what else to do to get through that
Just
moment.
how to get through it,
Just how to get through that. We don't need to
how
talk about the symptoms. I need
you're
someone to talk
right.
about what's happening
Yeah.
internally. And so
Yeah.
thank you. You guys just close, have your final thoughts, and then I'll close. But thank you so much. It's been such a beautiful thing. And let's just keep these things going. And again, I want to throw out to anybody that's listening, do what Emily has done. If you'd like us to discuss something and talk about it from a survivor's perspective, that we're not counselors, but I'll tell you one thing we do have is experience. And experience is what gives you wisdom, like Albert Einstein always says. And we really do, when you've healed and you've gotten to the other side, you are tried and true. So reach out and let us know what things you would like to talk to, please. I'll put my email, but it's gracedxoxo at hotmail.com, and I'll also put it in the comments. But go ahead, ladies, and close with anything that you'd like to. And remember to subscribe and follow. We get thousands and thousands of views and very few follows. So that's just how it works out here in this weird land. Keep us going. We don't ask for anything. Just click and subscribe or follow. So go ahead, ladies, and give it a last few seconds.
I just want to make a shout out also that Jody writes beautifully and amazing stuff just on just on
Thank
Facebook.
you. No,
So
I'm on, yeah,
be sure to be friends with her on Facebook and see a lot of the
Instagram, TikTok, yeah.
inspired things that she
Thank
writes. They're very,
you.
very worthwhile. So now I think this is such an important topic, and
And we
anyone
barely scratched the surface. I mean, you could talk about
yes,
this for
I
16
think
hours. I was
we could
just
talk a lot
I
more
think
about
maybe
this.
we will kind of continue this because
Yeah.
Sure.
we've only gotten to the very first steps of walking away.
Yes.
But
Hmm.
it's almost like when an addict is coming off of an addiction, because bad families are an addiction. So
Mhm.
part of relapse can be part of moving forward. And so even if you go
Yeah.
back, just know that if it feels icky, but you know what, you guys, I think we'll do another panel on this because
Yeah, we
I
should.
think. Oh
I
yeah.
was talking to my oldest daughter and she said, Mom, it's so important to talk about that because
Super huge.
my kids have not had the battle that I had because I removed them. And now though,
Yeah.
Mhm.
my youngest daughter finds her and her husband are in this battle with his family. And she said, Mom, my God, I had no idea how hard this is
It's so
because
hard.
it's terrifying, right? And all the shrapnel that comes at you, you're a liar, all the shame that comes, and you're
Yeah.
wrecking our
Mhm.
family. If you just go back
Yes.
into denial and shut up and live till you
Yes.
die a
Yeah.
miserable life. And
Right.
you know me, they've got me as their grandma and their mom. So we're not going to do that. We're going to win, but it's not easy. So you know what? We will continue this, you guys, with a second
Yes, that
panel.
would be great. And thank you so much,
Yep.
Jody and Emily. I really appreciate your
I wanted to
thoughts.
say one thing.
Yes.
I just want to assure everyone. I mean, I read your latest post, Jody, like with the young man who wrote in
Mhm.
about his confusion and trying to navigate his situation. Just know, I'm trying to look at the camera. You're not alone. And I
No.
think that's one of the most important things. We are coming together.
I love that.
And I appreciated what Judy said in her interview, that this is a time where we're speaking out. And
Yes.
honestly, I can't think of a time in history where it was
No, I love it.
possible to
Yeah.
speak out.
Mhm.
So it's a beautiful time to come together,
is.
and there is a way to support each other, and it's so good to have this platform. So
It is.
yeah,
It's
you're not
awesome.
alone.
You're not alone. I love that. All right.
Yes.
We're here breaking pedophiles down one secret at a time. We'll see you next time. Love you, ladies. Blessings over your life this week.
Yeah. Love to all of you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.